The food hub and these opportunities that have come about from these networking events has really taught me that in this situation, I don't have to go a full leap. I can, I can trial one area of the farm, one crop, see how it worked, and then, play out the opportunity that way. And it was a lot less risky for me. And that's where I need to be currently in the business environment, is not risky. I'm kind of risk adverse. And so I'd like it to be, it's been a nice learning experience, really. And now I'm gaining confidence.
Hi there. My name is Tammy Howard, and I'm an agriculture specialist at NCAT. I manage a project called Bringing the Farm to School, which is a USDA-funded program that aims to build producers' capacity to sell their products to schools. In addition to this capacity building piece, NCAT and our partners at the National Farm to School Network and multiple producer organizations throughout the country have been working together to connect producers with school food buyers at facilitated networking events. I'm excited to talk to a few folks that attended these networking events in Central Texas and made some valuable connections. I have Matt Hanson from Central Texas Food Hub and Cody Brown, an NCAT agriculture specialist and farmer with Growtopia Farms. Welcome to both of you, and thanks for taking the time to share your story with producers that might be interested in selling to schools and food hubs. Let's start with introductions. Matt, could you kick us off? Please introduce yourself and your role in the farm-to-school supply chain.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm glad to be here. My name's Matt Hanson. I'm with the Central Texas Food Hub, which is a social enterprise of the Central Texas Food Bank. It's an effort to utilize the infrastructure of the Central Texas Food Bank, which is in Austin, Texas, to play the middle piece of the supply chain to connect small to mid-scale local growers and producers with institutional purchasers, specifically schools in this case. As I said, it's a social enterprise, largely an effort to bolster the local food supply chain and local food system while helping the food bank to broaden our impact to feed more people.
Great. And Cody, what about you?
Yeah. Hey, Tammy. Thanks for having me here today. My name's Cody Brown. I'm an Sustainable Agriculture Specialist for NCAT. I started in March of 2023. I'm also a farmer and farm owner of Growtopia Farms. We're located in Converse, Texas, just outside of San Antonio. And we started Growtopia Farms in November of 2020, and we grow mushrooms and produce on about 2 acres.
Perfect. How did you get involved in farm to school? What piqued your interest?
It started back when we first started the farm in 2020, and a former NCAT specialist by the name of Robert Maggiani, he reached out to the farm. He was doing some work with the Sustainable Food Center in Austin for wholesale procurement and how to, scale up for wholesale. And so that's what really started the first conversation, was Robert talking about, to us at Growtopia, how do we grow more food and increase the accessibility of our food? At the time, we were just leasing land, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. But then as as I came on with NCAT and gained more experience over the years, and the farm moved locations where we had more access to land, that kind of changed the perspective. And also, working 5 years in the farmer's market every Saturday, Sunday, on top of everything you need to do in the week, that will get you thinking about other outlets as well. That's what really piqued my interest. And, you just always have a sense of fulfillment and can sleep good at night when your food is for kids. So that's kind of what sparked my interest and has kept me staying the path, if you will.
Thanks, Cody. And Matt, what about you? It sounded like the Food Hub from the get-go was focused on values-based procurement. Was it always focused on supporting the farm-to-school supply chain, or did that evolve?
Well, we've operated the food hub for just a little bit over a year. Our first sales to schools were last October in 2024. But we were brought into the fold by a local school district that was having trouble with being able to both source but more so serve each one of their campuses, which they had, I believe, 12 campuses. And so and they didn't have a centralized drop-off point, nor a way to receive a consolidated order and then distribute it to their campuses in their capacity. And so they needed a partner that had that kind of infrastructure already in place, and food banks do. We have cold storage, we can aggregate, we have a fleet of trucks, and from the beginning, we were asked to participate in the values-based purchasing, which was at that time part of the LFS grant, which was a federally funded reimbursable grant to schools to be able to purchase from local producers. And so there was a big push to kind of make that, be able to better use those funds and make that work. And so from the beginning, yes, values-based purchasing has been a part of what we do and will continue to be as we grow this program.
You're using the word food bank and food hub, not interchangeably, but you started out as a food bank and now are formally a food hub. Is that just a matter of terminology, or is that something that you formally made a transition to?
It's more or less a matter of terminology. We're still a food bank. We still operate, the Central Texas Food Bank still operates in that capacity throughout our 21 county service area in Central Texas. But the food hub is kind of like I said in the beginning, a social enterprise that, because of this opportunity, that is part of the operations of the food bank, but definitely somewhat separate. We're still kind of working all that out. I mean, the hope is to at one point create an entity within the or under the umbrella of the food bank that will operate kind of under its own volition and in its own capacity.
Well, I'm excited to hear how that process evolves and hear what comes of that. Well, how did you meet? Maybe, Cody, you can answer this question. How did you meet and what opportunities were presented from that situation?
I met Matt through, I believe it was either TOFGA, the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, and or the SFFS conference held at Texas State University. But there was a networking event, farm to school networking event in conjunction with that conference, where we had a networking event at Manor ISD. And again, Tammy and Robert Maggiani invited me to go from a farmer perspective. And that's where I met Matt formally. And that's where we started a conversation along with a couple other individuals, being Trisha Bates and Marissa Bell, on, what do you have that might be an easy in for schools? What's something you feel confident that you can grow? It was a cooler part of the year. And so we were going into fall, I believe. And so we decided on carrots. Carrots would be a good try. There's a big demand for carrots. And that's really kind of what started the conversation in the beginning. Matt, I'll let you offer anything you have from your perspective on that.
Well, I'm just glad you answered it because your younger mind can remember that. I was when you asked that, Tammy, I was struggling to find that point. But yeah, that was it. So it was the confluence of those different events that happened during that time period, and I think so. That group of that you mentioned, Trisha Bates and Marissa Bell, they were part of the group that came to the food bank to explore that partnership with us. And so they had already kind of explored what products that they would like to see in the schools, what would as Cody said, kind of both be easy to feed the kids, what the kids' demand look like, but also what we could grow in Central Texas at that time. And so Cody was on that list. Growtopia was on that list. So I remember seeing that before I actually met Cody. But then, we hit it off from there and worked on a couple of times we brought product in, I believe, through the Food Hub.
Great. Yeah. And Marissa, and was it Trisha? What ISD was she from? Do you remember? And did they actually approached you after the networking event, or did they just have that interest and want to figure out a solution?
Well, Marissa's with Lake Travis ISD, which is a smaller school district just west of Austin. Trissa Bates at that time was part of a collaborative between Lake. It's kind of complicated, but Lake Travis ISD, the Sustainable Food Center. I think she was a consultant with the Sustainable Food Center, building this pilot project for our collaboration, and so that's kind of what their roles were. And then they introduced the food hub, or not necessarily the concept of the food hub, but just that collaboration between the food bank and being able to supply not just Lake Travis ISD, but there were a couple of other schools that were involved in that conversation as well.
Oh, okay. Right. So just expanding beyond food bank into more of like a broader food distribution within the supply chain.
That's right. Yes.
Great. Yes. Speaking of which, what is a challenge that happened from that relationship, or just in general when selling to schools? It sounds like you've expanded that in the last year or so. And then how did you address it, Matt?
A couple of challenges that pop out to mind are, one for me, and still is pretty steep learning curve for me, is just the procurement process for school districts and the way that they have to procure food, because they utilize federal funds. There's a lot of rules and regulations about how they go about their procurement, which involves, a solicitation process and bidding, and then they have to craft the language of that solicitation in the right way so that they don't show favoritism to any one vendor. And so learning that has been definitely a challenge for me. And then being able to navigate that, and then coupled with kind of the timeline of, and Cody can speak to this as well, but the timeline of our local producers and when they need to start crop planting, when they need to plant their seeds, and what that whole process looks like, trying to align that with the timeline of when schools need food, because that doesn't align. And so that's those two pieces of the puzzle have proved to be challenging, not impossible, but I think we're pretty close to finding some alignment there. But those have been the two larger challenges among many others.
I was just at a conference where we were doing a farm to school track in Washington, and somebody did describe that procurement process as it's not only challenging for the producer, but it is also challenging for school districts that really do want to focus on purchasing local products, due to the budgeting and then their support with getting reimbursed for their programs and all of that. It just makes it extra challenging for everybody that wants to get that local food into schools. So how have you managed to address that challenge when working with Marissa or any of the other school districts that you've been working with?
It requires a really concerted effort to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on in all parts of it at the same time, which, is tough for me. I trying to create some transparency in that whole process, both for the schools and for the farmers, to be able to kind of see what's happening on either side of it. I feel very fortunate because the school districts that we are working with are dedicated to building this model of being able to purchase from local schools, because that procurement process isn't tailored to small scale producers. It's tailored to more large scale producers and a consistent supply chain, which, as any local small scale grower can tell you, there's so much variability in that it's hard to maintain consistency over time. And so, but they're very dedicated. And so we're trying to find workarounds, trying to find collaborations. And currently we're working on Marissa with Lake Travis ISD has crafted a specific RFP, which is a request for proposal that is geared specifically towards local foods. And so that's why I say we're close to maybe finding some alignment between the planning of schools and when they need food and what their demand looks like with the production of some of our local farmers. Because now I can take what that demand is in that RFP to the farmers and say, okay, here, put this into your crop plan for the spring, because that's what we're looking at is the spring semester for this school district. Put this into your crop plan and what can you grow? How much can you grow? And we can work out pricing. And then I can make that commitment to the school. And so having a dedicated collaboration between the school districts and us, and then some dedicated farmers has been integral. And then trying to create transparency across that whole supply chain and that whole transactional process to make sure that everybody understands everybody's role and what everybody has to contend with. Because you're right, Tammy, it's not easy for the schools either to navigate that. Did that answer your question? I felt like I might have run afoul there, but
no, that was great. Yeah, it sounds like lots of flexibility on everybody's part.
Great synopsis. Yes.
Well, yeah. Speaking of growers, Cody, what's one challenge that you've faced in selling to schools? I know you've sold to one school directly. Is that correct? And so maybe answering that in the perspective of selling to schools and to the food hub, and how have you addressed it?
With my experience, I've kind of had two different experiences. One was when we had just kind of got started rolling and we were still at our first farm location. Marissa Bell actually reached out to me at the farm directly through email. And this was back in 2021, of October 2021. And she was already starting the conversation of October is farm to school month. We'd like to highlight a local good from a local farm in some of the classrooms, and maybe do a demonstration in the cafeteria. That was my first experience with it, and it was very informal. And she came to the farm herself, drove her vehicle, and she picked up 100 pounds of carrots. So she came and picked up directly. It was just kind of one of those one-off opportunities that ended up later on down the road playing into a lot bigger of an opportunity. And so when I had met Matt and we were re-looking at farm to school, and I'm really looking to put more effort into it and make a concerted leap, then there were some other challenges that I began to face. It was not only is there a challenge of consistency mainly, and in both ways, is you need to have more food and it needs to be of a consistent quality that is purchasable from, a larger conglomerate such as the food hub, or from, a school district that has multiple different locations. It's different from growing food for farmers market sales, because in the farmers market atmosphere, you can have 6 to 8 different crops, and you might only take $100 or $200 worth of each product to market, and you get rid of it all at the market. But, it doesn't look perfect. It doesn't all look the same. You've got high variety, but that works for a farmer's market setting. That's kind of sometimes what the customers are looking for. So then making the transition from, and we still do pursue some farmers markets, but we're trying to have less dependency on the cash flow of farmers markets. And with that comes decrease in variety. I try to grow three to four crops, and then one or two of them I like to plant more of. And that leads me into my, the next challenge is that you just need to grow more. And that's also kind of how I address those challenges of, if there's going to be inconsistency in every succession that I plant, then I just decided that I need to do more per succession and then do more successions so that I can, in hopes, guarantee a little bit more consistency, increase my quality and quantity. And with the increased quantities, you'll have more grade A's and then you'll sort out the grade B's. The great thing about the Central Texas Food Hub is they're very flexible. The quantities demanded are manageable for me as a small farm. They have a minimum requirement of 200 pounds, which is not a little amount of food, but it's also not a large amount of food, where some of the other wholesale buyers that we've talked to, such as, the common market, or if you even want to sell to like Labatt or another food distributor of the sort, they really want a pallet minimum. And a pallet minimum is a little bit harder to attain for me on the small scale that I'm working at. That would be, that would really take almost a total revamp of the way that I operate the farm. And so the Food Hub and these opportunities that have come about from these networking events has really taught me that in this situation, I don't have to go a full leap. I can, I can trial one area of the farm, one crop, see how it works, and then, play out the opportunity that way. And it was a lot less risky for me. And that's where I need to be currently in the business environment, is not risky. I'm kind of risk adverse. And so I'd like it to be, it's been a nice learning experience, really. And now I'm gaining confidence and also experience in asking the question of, is this how we want to grow food full time? Where's the balance? And depending on where life takes you. So that's kind of the way that I've addressed some of those challenges. But, in summary, I would say the largest challenge is consistency.
Oh, that was a great answer, Cody. And I loved how you tied in bringing in kind of your values and risk assessment as as an individual farm owner and a family and all of those things, because those are a huge part of figuring out the right marketing channel for your product and your farm. Matt, how many growers are you buying from, and do you require any kind of certifications or GAP certifications, grading requirements? It sounds like there's some of that there, but maybe you can describe that process.
So currently we're working with, it varies, but we've, over the course of the life of the Food Hub, we've worked with, I'd say about 7 different producers. Well, maybe no 9, because there's a couple of protein producers and I don't want to leave them out. But yeah, so let's say 9. We do have specifications. As Cody said, we want a minimum of 200 pounds per item per pickup or drop off. And so, and largely that's helps us justify the movement of food through our system and the logistics that it takes to pick it up on the farm or to receive it at the dock, and then to be able to distribute it to the schools. And then we do require, and I'm flexible. I work with the grower as long as it meets the specifications of the schools. We can work on packaging. We can, whatever that looks like. It has to be packaged how we're going to distribute it. So if we're selling it in 5-pound cases to the schools. I want to receive it in 5-pound cases. We're not doing any kind of sorting in our facility. As far as GAP certification, no, we don't require that. That's until that's a demand placed on us by the schools and the institutions we work with. I don't want that to be a barrier for entry for our small producers, because that's a pretty onerous task to undertake, gaining GAP certification. So I do require, though, food safety protocols. The schools do require that as well. So we have to make sure that the farmers, what their wash and pack looks like, or that, there needs to be traceability. So we want to make sure that it's labeled correctly with some kind of lot or identifier code with date of harvest, or a date of packaging, contact information, quantity, and what the contents are. So labels that speak to that on each package. And then insurance. So every farmer or every producer needs to have liability insurance. And I believe $1 million coverage. I'm not going to get too much into that because I will say the wrong thing for sure. But I think it's a minimum of $1 million liability, third-party liability insurance, and all of those things. We're willing to work with the producer on and help provide, to some degree, help provide resources for those if that's not something that if they haven't pursued insurance or they haven't looked at food safety protocols. Those are definitely things that we can kind of provide some resources for, so that producer, when they're ready to sell to us, then they have all of those pieces in place. And I've explored a little bit on Group GAP, which is another route to take, which makes it a little easier for small producers to obtain that GAP certification. That's no small task either. So I haven't quite figured out how to make that work yet.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that explanation. And it seems pretty standard for an intermediate or, wholesale market. It's good that growers know and understand that those are some of the things that are required to get into that type of marketing channel.
Yeah, and on the quantity, I just want to say, if I can, I'm sorry. I want to make sure that we also, for me, a large part of this is creating redundancy in our food system, and so we don't want any one producer to feel like they have to supply all of what that demand looks like. So it's largely an aggregating effort. For me, the ideal would be 200 or however many one farmer wants to produce to supply, and then I get another 200 from another farmer, and then another 200 from another farmer, so that we can meet that 600-pound demand to the schools. I think that would be an ideal scenario, rather than just one filling that whole gap.
Yeah, and also a way to, kind of spread out risk within the supply chain as well. Let's talk a little bit about contingency plans. Do you guys have that in your contract? And Cody, did you talk about that with Matt or with any of the other intermediate markets that you're selling to?
Yeah, I would say we definitely had the conversations about insurance. If I was GAP certified, or at least FSMA certified, or knowledgeable on, food handling, and then a written SOP that essentially documents how our food moves through the wash and pack and into the cooler and then out for delivery. Other than that, that's kind of where we sit as a small farm, and that's kind of the means that we can work within. We do have a minimum $1 million insurance policy that's also very commonly required from all the farmers market that we've been a part of. So in fact, I think we're listed, we're insured for 3 farmers market. We're insured for the Central Texas Food Hub, and we're insured for the Central Texas Farmers Co-op. So each one of them, you need to have, different insurances if it's required. And it's really not a huge burden of cost, and it's nice to have that safety net or protection in the event something unfortunate happens. But if and when I look to scale up and maybe go full wholesale, or full farm to school, then I will put in the effort to become GAP certified, because then it's going to become more of a necessity. That's kind of where I sit.
No, I was just going to say, as far as like contingencies, when you asked that, my mind went to what if we can't source the product that we've committed to schools?
That is what I was thinking about. But Cody, that also is like, your mind was like, oh, food safety, and that's certainly a contingency as well.
No, and we need that perspective. For us, if we can't, like, my goal is to work with as many producers as possible, as I said, to make sure that, if there are gaps in that production for a farmer or a group of farmers, maybe some kind of climactic events or, something happens, we can backfill or, still meet that demand with other producers that are filling that funnel, so to speak. We understand that. And so that's part of the transparency piece, is making sure that we have clear lines of communication with the school, so that and they understand, that there's the possibility, the variability that happens, and the seasonality that happens with local production, that they have a contingency plan in place as well. So they can source from some of their more broad line distributors to fill that need, because the kids are they still have to make those meals for the kids. So that's kind of the way I look at those contingency plans. And then when we do forward, because we do MOUs with growers to make sure that all of that, provides a little safety net for those growers to make that commitment to produce that product for us. We build that into the language of that MOU, that if something happens, then there's no firm obligation to uphold your end of the deal if you don't have the product.
Well, we talked about some of the challenges, which are many, but what are some of the unexpected bonuses or successes that you'd like to highlight when selling to, Cody, let's turn to you, when selling to the food hub and when you develop that relationship with the Lake Travis Independent School District?
Yeah, I will start with the little extra bonuses that is real source of positivity for me, in the fact that, when I sold, I think this item was tomatoes. And then I'll get back to that here in a second. But this item was tomatoes, and I dropped off, I think it was at least 200 pounds of tomatoes. I was thinking closer to 300 or 400 to the food hub that Matt had ordered. It was just at the turn of the year. Like, school had just come back into service. Farmers markets are notoriously very slow during the Christmas times, the couple weeks before, and the New Year's weekend. And so I just had bukus of tomatoes. That was one of the reasons for success, was I had bukus of tomatoes, and there was a demand for them in the schools, and the farmers market demand was low. So I had surplus supply, which I used as, an opportunity to build a relationship at the food hub. The bonus that came was months afterwards, when all the different schools were reaching out to me for proof of address for the farm. I think Marissa Bell at Lake Travis got some tomatoes, and then Florence ISD had gotten some tomatoes, and I believe one other school. But I had just dropped off to the food hub, and so it was put a nice smile on my face to see the other schools emailing me, and I got to, see in the written where the food had gone and how happy the individuals were. And I did not expect that bonus. That was great.
Something that is only a dream to have surplus tomatoes, speaking from the perspective of a Montanan.
Yeah,
we never have surplus tomatoes here.
Especially in the middle of December.
Yeah.
In the middle of December, that's right.
It goes back to what Matt was saying about having the food when the kids and when the people want it. And that's kind of a funny story that us farmers tell each other, is that oh, watch, I'm going to have my biggest tomato harvest on Christmas week. And I'm not going to have anybody at the markets that are going to buy them. Or, they're going to buy some, but you don't expect to just totally blow out sales. So that's kind of funny that touches back on what Matt was saying earlier, and the fact that like school runs August, September until May. And then a lot of our bounty in the Central Texas area, if you don't have hoop houses, I don't grow in hoop houses, so I don't have the infrastructure for that. I start getting a lot of bounty in May, June, and July when there's no school. In August and September, when school is ramping up, it's consistently over 100 degrees heat here. So it's hard to be on time right there with the beginning of school. And then going into, we get another bounty October, November and December, and then we have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's that come. So it's it's kind of a funny dance we do.
It is definitely different than our perspective in the northern latitudes, for sure. Well, Matt, what are some unexpected pluses or bonuses that you've encountered when selling to schools?
Well, the main one for me that comes up is not necessarily unexpected, but was just really like fed my soul, is to feed the kids. And then Marissa Bell, we're going to say her name a lot here, but she's really great at the social media and documenting the process, does lots of photos, and took a lot of photos of when these foods actually made it to the lunch line, and then the kids actually eating those and seeing their faces with these products. And a lot of, which is kind of another side bonus, is being able to bring in products that they would typically never see. For some of these kids, this may be their biggest meal of their day, right? And so a lot of the stuff that we can source from local producers is different than what they can see in the grocery store or what they might see anywhere else, like watermelon radishes or lunchbox peppers, just, for example. And seeing their face and kind of the interaction that they have with their food and that connection that's created, hopefully will last a lifetime, and who knows where that leads, right? So that's been fantastic. But then also, I'm a disruptor of sorts, and so I like to see systems that are entrenched and maybe don't serve us as well as we would like them to. I like to see a little shakeup happen, and that's what I see happening with the collaboration between our local growers, the food hub, and the schools and the institutions. And what we're trying to build here is change this system up so that it serves more of our community. It serves our local producers. It serves our local economy. It serves our children and the people that don't typically have access to these local goods for whatever reasons. That's been a nice little bonus, because I can see some dominoes starting to fall where we might really start to gain some momentum here pretty soon and build a system that, changes the game a little bit. So that's been nice.
Great. Well, as we wrap up, I was hoping that you each could talk about what you think producers should know about how to succeed in selling to intermediaries and to schools in general. So, Cody, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would say maybe just you don't have to be necessarily frightened of the opportunity. And it is kind of scary in a sense to rethink the way you're doing business and rethink the bottom line and redo all your crop planning and all your packaging. And, it can be a daunting task, and it can sometimes be overwhelming. But I would say just take it one step at a time. Experiment with opportunities such as like the Central Texas Food Hub, or maybe a one-off in October National Farm to School Month, something of the sort. Just try it and get some experience. But I will tell you that if you don't plan for bounty and plan for the supply to serve those that really demand a larger quantity, then you'll never be able to make the leap. So sometimes you got to plan for bounty and then deal with the problem of trying to sell it all. But it's a different problem than not having it at all to sell to or through a different market. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Don't be scared. Start small and plan for bounty.
I think for me, I would say, just from my perspective, having a little bit for growers and producers to have a little bit of flexibility, build as well as building in bounty, build in some flexibility into your model as much as you can. And then patience, because there's not really, there are farm to school movements out there and people are building these pipelines and these systems, but it's still fairly small. So I think a little patience is can be helpful as much as you can afford that to be able to work with these systems as they're in real time, as they're being built. To Cody's earlier point of kind of assessing that risk, it's okay to take a leap of faith too. You may be risk averse as we all are to some degree. I think really what this is going to require, what this effort requires, is that we all challenge our own risk averseness. It's not a word, but whatever that is, to kind of challenge that and push that, and then that way, who knows what that opens up, and who knows, where that will lead to. We already know where doing the same thing day after day and kind of business as usual leads to. So really, to do something different, we got to kind of push that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think one of the benefits of selling to schools and some food hubs and other intermediaries is that, like, once you do get your systems down and establish those sales relationships, it can actually be a predictable market for you to plan your product and your production around. So, but you do have to make that, I guess, leap of faith to make that happen for sure.
And we did, you do it anyway. Every time you put a seed in the ground, that's a leap of faith. You don't know if that's going to come up. If you're going to, are you going to get rain? Is your well going to run dry? Is the army worm going to come and just stop? So so it's already, you're already good at that part.
I would also like to add too that, maybe just a little snippet of a little common sense and grow what grow a crop you can grow if you're going to try and grow a lot of it, and then grow something that schools demand. Like, I can grow acres and acres of okra. I mean, the climate's perfect for it, but getting rid of acres and acres of okra is a different problem to have. Whereas, there's some crops like
kids
broccoli,
don't like okra?
squash and zucchini, tomatoes, carrots, potatoes. There's some popular ones that are, they have a high demand. And I would just say use a little common sense there, because though I can grow a lot of okra, maybe I shouldn't.
Well, there's, to that point, there's also opportunity if you get the right partner in your institutional purchaser to create some niche crops as well. Like some of the things that they can't get elsewhere, have those conversations. If there's something that you have a good relationship with and you can grow well, that maybe they haven't thought of, you can present that idea. And maybe that's something that, they can sell to the kids and force them to eat, or coax them to eat. But we've found a couple of those items here in Central Texas, so I think there's that opportunity as well. But kids don't. My grandkids will attest, they are not fans of okra.
I want to thank you both for your time and for shaking up that system so that kids in Central Texas schools have access to nutritious local food. Is there anything else you want to add before we call it a wrap?
I'll just say, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tammy, for coordinating this. It's been a great program, and I really like the work that you're doing at the Central Texas Food Hub. And I'm looking forward to, what the future holds for farm to school in Central Texas.
And likewise, I really appreciate you, and especially Cody, just being able to see the opportunity that's there, or potentially there. And I love our collaboration, both as kind of that grower and purchaser relationship, but also just as a collaborator and a co-conspirator, if you will. And so thank you very much. And thank you, Tammy, for the work you'll do at NCAT and getting this information out there, and excited to see where this will all lead.
I am as well. And I just want to say that I think some of these relationships would not have happened without our retired colleague, Robert Maggiani, who has done a lot to support and grow the local food system in Central Texas and actually throughout Texas. So I just want to acknowledge all the work that Robert did leading up to the stuff that we're doing over the past couple of years.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.